Hey friends, my name is Nate Nims. Thank you for joining us on this Spiritual Practice Thursday at Grace as we continue to explore the Enneagram together. Today on these Thursdays, we've been doing different spiritual practices. We've looked at contemplative prayer, we've looked at activism, we've looked at ways that we can meditate and that we can pause and find ourselves in God's presence. And for the past few weeks, we have been looking at the Enneagram, this personality typology that encourages us to be mindful, to think about the ways that our personality and our self shifts in times of stress or in times of security, because we all know that there are sort of default ways that we can just move through life. There is an autopilot pattern that we can fall into. But if we are mindful, if we are thoughtful, if we know ourselves, then we can continue to know where God is leading us. Or as the late Protestant theologian John Calvin said, you have to know yourself in order to know God. Or as Ian Cron and Suzanne Stabile put in their book, The Road Back to You, the book that is the primary source in our journey together, learning the Enneagram doesn't change how you see, it changes how you respond. So for the last 3 weeks, we looked at the gut triads, the numbers of 8, 9, and 1. And we are now moving into a different triad. And we'll see together that the numbers 2, 3, and 4, these different personality types, they don't move from the gut. As life happens to them, their first instinct is not to act, but it's to feel. And they all feel and they respond to those feelings in different ways. But 2, 3, and 4 fall into what we call the heart triad. Today we're going to be looking explicitly at the heart and the Enneagram 2. And 2s are known for being helpers. They are caring and compassionate and just really good-hearted, great folks. There is a pillow behind me on the couch that one of my good friends gave to me, and they are an Enneagram 2, and it is just a gift to have a friend or a colleague that is a 2, because they're called the helper because they're really helpful. So we'll be learning about what it means to be a helper and what they can do to grow in their faith. So here are some things to consider. Maybe you have heard this, or maybe you know this about someone that is a 2. A 2 might say something like, when it comes to taking care of others, I can't say no. They say that they're great listeners, and they remember the stories that make up our lives. 2s are often anxious about misunderstandings in relationships and will work to strive beyond that. Twos are drawn to people. And sometimes, if a two is interacting with you, they just sense what you need. And they will try to provide that for you. You can almost think that they're psychic. They just pick up on you and recognize what you need for help. Twos are very loving persons. They care for others at the core of who they are. But at the same time, they need so much of that love in return. They need to be acknowledged. They need to be appreciated. And sometimes they can be a little resentful. Sometimes they give so much love, they expect more love to come back. Twos are, at the same time though, more comfortable giving than receiving. They like it when someone does something unexpected, when someone picks up on the needs that they have, but sometimes they can have a difficulty with the control that comes from being the helper instead of the one that is being helped. So each week, as we have looked at the Enneagram, we've seen a meme and a cat to hopefully get to a bit of the core of who these personalities are. And here is the type 2 cat meme. It's a cat reading a book that says, "How to give love in such a way they feel obligated to love me back, but not out of guilt of all I do for them, but out of undying appreciation." Right? Like twos just want this appreciation. They want that feeling of love to wash over them. And so they help and help and help, believing that in that giving, others will reciprocate. Healthy twos. When twos are feeling secure, when they are living into this love that is at the core of their being, they won't fear a loss in relationships, and they can know that they're a person that can say no. Those two letters, N-O, can be a complete sentence, and if a two is healthy, they know that and they can say that. Healthy twos will create comfortable and caring and hospitable spaces that welcome their lives and let them know that they are loved and cared for. When a two is on autopilot, when they're just sort of going through life as they usually go through life, they will express their needs by helping, right? They will sometimes act generously, but that generosity can come with an expectation of interest and return. It's that reciprocity. Now, sometimes for a healthy two, this can mean that they don't have the best of boundaries, and it's not that they're being codependent. It's not that they're really struggling with boundaries, but it's that pride is ultimately what it comes down to, and we'll see that later on as well. But they can assume that others have to have the help that only they can offer, and so that pride can get in the way and create some boundary issues. An unhealthy two will be almost completely codependent, though. When a two is secure in themselves and when a two is on autopilot and just going through life without being too mindful about how they're responding or their stress or their feelings in a moment, they will desire love so much so that they will accept substitutes in its place. They will accept neediness and companionship and purely like utilitarian relationships if it gives them a response. Like, we've got to remember, we are in that feeling triad, and there are feelings soaked deep into each one of the numbers that we'll see in the coming weeks. And twos, when they are unhealthy, they are just living into that need. They're really unhealthy, they will accept a substitute for that love. They don't help in this space out of really trying to care for others' needs, but only out of expecting something back for that investment. Now, what folks love about being twos, what one person said about being a two is that I nearly always know how to respond and behave in complicated social situations. I can be in a room with someone and they can be told a devastating diagnosis and I can care for them. Right? Twos just have that keen ability to be in difficult spaces, to feel the weight of a diagnosis and know how to respond to it with grace. That is an amazing gift, isn't it? This world needs twos to help provide that care and comfort and security. At the same time, what someone else said about not liking being a two. They said, I desperately want people to give me positive feedback and compliments, but once they do, I can't enjoy them because it feels like exposing. It feels too exposing to have the attention focused on my needs and behaviors. It's a bit of the pride that we talked about before, right? Twos thrive on being the helper, but being the helpy is difficult. And what we should remember about twos and what folks wish that others understood about being twos is that, at least in the United States, women are often assumed to fit into this part of the Enneagram typology. We assume that women and mothers and caregivers are automatically in this because they are caretakers, they are givers, they are providers that do this work. But if you are a woman and a two, you can feel like you're in a double bind. Because in a societal role, you're expected to do this. Sometimes you want to do this, but then it's an over and abundance of doing this. Imagine this wasn't COVID season and someone's a two and you invite them to your house for a dinner party, but you only invite them because you know at that dinner party they're going to do the dishes. Does that really make the two feel welcomed and cared for and appreciated, or does that make them feel used and belittled? That's something that other folks have to remember about twos. They will help, and we need their help, but we do not need to exploit them. And so, questions to consider if you are a two. Are you a people pleaser that is willing to help others at the drop of a hat? Is it painful for you to say no? Are you especially attuned to the needs of others? Are you an excellent listener? Do you like making your house a home for guests? If you responded yes to those with feelings of appreciation and love for others that you want to feel back for yourself, there's a very good chance you are a two. So in stress, twos will take on the characteristics of unhealthy eights. Eights were in the last triad that we looked at, but eights and twos, when they are unhealthy, fall into this demanding, controlling, demeaning, and manipulative state of mind where they will blame others instead of accepting faults for themselves. They will become controlling of others, and twos will control through the help that they provide and sometimes through the guilt that they will give you because they provided help. In security, though, twos go to the healthy side of four. Now, four is the last one that we'll look at in this feeling triad, but there they have a focus inward. They can help themselves. They can do self-care. They can invest in themselves. They can feel love and appreciation for themselves and be appreciated by others, not out of transactional relationships, but out of relationships that are grounded in the goodness of the life that we share with one another. Now, the Enneagram, of course, has wings, numbers on either side. So not only do we look at how we shift and move in stress and security, we also look at sort of the shades of our personality color. So a two with a one wing is going to want to do things, but do them properly. They're going to want to be seen as dependable and responsible. With a 1 wing, a 2 is going to be a helper, but they'll be critical of themselves, and sometimes they might be more controlling. They might be more prone to guilt. So if they want to help, they might beat themselves up and say, you need to help, but you need to help this way. And then they might help, but then they might go back and think, that wasn't quite right. If you're a 2 with a 1 wing, you need to have clearer boundaries, and you need to be more aware of your emotional needs, and you have to express them, which might be difficult. It might not come natural, but it has to happen. A 2 with a 3 wing is likely going to be more extroverted and a bit more competitive. We'll look at the 3s next week, but they will be more into the relationships that they have with one another and seeking to connect that relationship and receive in response and feel that appreciation. They're going to be more confident. They want to be loving and generous. And so a 2 with a 3 wing, because they're striving to be seen as loving, as generous, as caring, they're going to struggle a bit more expressing their needs. But either way you fall with this wing on the Enneagram, for a 2, you have to be able to express your needs. Now, as we've said so far a couple times, pride is the deadly sin for 2s. 2s secretly believe, and it's always under the surface, and it is very difficult to admit, that other people have more needs than they do. 2s believe that the world would be lost without their help. And so the skill, the virtue that 2s need to develop is humility. They need to acknowledge their own needs, their own dependence, and they need to ask others directly for support and help. Because 2s struggle with pride, that's sort of the core motivation sin there. They are helping, they are achieving, they are giving, sometimes out of pure goodness, but other times out of assuming, I have the answer, I can do this, you can't survive without me. So let's look at SNAP, stop, notice, ask, and pivot for a 2. This mindfulness technique for how to recognize ourselves and find God in our midst. So for a 2, stopping will not come naturally. Because they are givers, because they are helpers, because they are doers, it can be a challenge to slow down. But they need to focus inward instead of looking outward, and just slow down, take a breath, and acknowledge themselves first. As they notice while they've stopped, they need to ask themselves, who am I tempted to move towards? What am I thinking I have to do next? And with that, as they give, as they help, as they contribute to the needs of others, they should ask themselves, do I feel taken for granted? Do I feel unappreciated? Do I feel resentful? Do I wish people would notice me as much as I notice them? And then they have to ask themselves some questions such as this. When it comes to what they believe about life, a 2 needs to ask themselves, do I have to meet the needs of others in order to be loved? They need to ask themselves, are someone else's needs more important than mine? They need to ask themselves, could someone achieve this on their own without me? And all of those beliefs, all of those questions, it can make them feel prideful, needed, resentful, sometimes unable to articulate their own needs. And is that true? Are those beliefs true? Do they need to give in order to be loved, or are they loved simply for being who they are? Will they be rejected if they ask for help in response? And that's where the pivot comes in for a 2. The pivot for a 2 will often come down to this. What do you need? Can you let us know? Can we help you? For a 2, they need to recognize the feelings that are pushing them towards helping, but then they also need to pause and stop and think before they do. They need to ask themselves, why am I rushing to help in this way? And it's not that we don't want their help, and it's not that we don't need their help. It's that we need them to be secure and live into the healthiest version of themselves, which also means they have to receive from others. And that might be the most difficult pivot for them. The healing message that 2s need to hear is this: you are wanted, you are needed, and you are loved. 2s matter, and they can begin to learn how to directly express their needs and their desires without fear of rejection or humiliation. We all need help. 2s keenly know that other people need help, but they need help as well. So if you are a 2, know how loved you are. Know how cared for you are, and know that you can ask for help, because you know well how much help others need. And we know how much help we need, which means we all know how much help you need as well. That is a very brief overview of the Enneagram 2, but just a couple more thoughts on spiritual transformation. 2s can sometimes only hint at what they need. While they're helping someone in a way, they might say something like, it would be really nice if, or I wish that, or what would you think if someone did, right? They'll get around the help that they are looking for. They'll express one way or another something about the feelings that they need to connect with, but they won't quite say it outright. So 2s, just be blunt and let us know. It'll be okay, and we will help you because you always help us. 2s need to work on not always saying yes. And they need to remember that no is a complete sentence. Finally, I think 2s need to ask themselves, is this mine to do? Is this my responsibility? And as they do that, they can ask themselves, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? And what do I need in this moment? Because sometimes a 2 might see something going on in the world or in a relationship, and they just feel like, I have to do this so that I can be in a relationship. They need to ask themselves, what do I feel? Am I acting out of a desire to get this love in return? Am I acting out of resentment in the hopes that they will repay with reciprocity and interest? Or is this something that is really mine to do at all? 2s are great persons. They are amazing friends, and we need 2s in our lives, which means we need them to acknowledge the pride that they live with and to cultivate the humility that will make them even better. So if you are a 2, thank you for the help and the care and the security that you offer to this world, because we would fall apart without you. And thank you all for joining us this Thursday as we've continued to explore the Enneagram together. And next week, we will be back with Enneagram 3s. So thank you for joining me. And until next time, remember that God created you to be you. So may we all embrace our personalities and live into the fullness of our lives.